All right, here's a quick video to demonstrate how to use tkinter for a simple interface. What I've got for you here is the following. Let me run my existing version. What I've got is a little window, and you enter in a value in centimeters and then you convert it to inches. This window is what we will be calling root. This blue zone at the top, including the enter centimeter value to convert comment, is called a label frame. We also have a label frame down below, and that's where we'll put our output. You can't see it right now, but there's an empty label inside of the lower label frame where the results will go. So if we put in 100 centimeters and then click on convert, it'll tell us that it is 39.37 inches. So I'll close that, and then let's build this from scratch. So the first thing we want to do is to import tkinter, and I'm also going to import from tkinter import tk, which is the main window tool, and I'm also going to import the variable, the constant both, which is useful for when you're sizing windows, or if you want to put borders that are the same on the x and y dimensions. So first things first, make a root and set it equal to the tk object. I'm gonna make a couple of colors that we'll use. They aren't the prettiest, but they're okay. To define a color, you make a string that starts with a octothorpe or hashtag, and then you give RGB components in hexadecimal. So I'm going to go 00, that's no red, 77, that's like a medium green, and then a B6 for the blue. I've got an input zone color. I'll call that 0096C7, and I'm going to copy that and make it the same for the output. You can tinker with these if you like. Output color equals there. And then finally, now that I've got a root window, I can set its background color by using the config option. So root.config, and then you give the name of the characteristic you'd like to change, and then you set it equal to whatever you want to set it equal to. So I'm going to set it equal to root color. A few other things I can change. I can set the root.title to centimeter to inch converter, and that will appear across the top of the window. And then I can use the geometry features of the TK window to set the size. So I'll say root.geometry. And then it's a little bit unusual, you set this via a string, 300 by 200. You set it as a string and not as a set of integers. Okay, now I'm gonna take the root here, and I'm gonna create 2 frames, and then I'm going to place the frames inside of root. I'm going to use the pack interface, so it will put the first frame on the top and the second frame on the bottom. input frame is equal to, here I have to use the full tkinter dot label frame interface. This goes inside of root. I want the text label for the label frame to be enter centimeter value to convert. Then I'm going to hit return, and then I'm going to say the background of this frame will be the input color. Then I'll make another frame. I'll make an output frame. Whoops. I'll make it a label frame also, though I'm not going to give it a label. So it belongs to root. It will be placed inside of root. And the background color for this will be output color. So now I need to put the frames into root. And the way we're going to do that is with the pack. But we'll add a couple of parameters to the pack. You can't just say input frame dot pack, but we're actually gonna give it a little bit of padding, a pad on the Y axis of 5. For the output frame, we'll pack that with here's another way to do pad Y. You can give pad Y a pair of integers as if they're in a tuple, 5, 10. So it'll be 5 on the top, 10 on the bottom. And the fill for this, we want to use, here's where we're going to use both. And expand equals true. This means that we'll fill up all the space with the output frame inside of the root. Now I've got to put a field for the output, and this is a little bit funky because I want to set it equal to 0 or to nothing actually. And then when I eventually put in a function to call, I have to check and see if there's nothing in the field, in which case we don't do anything when you click on the convert button. But let's say output field is equal to a tkinter label. Now this, it doesn't go in root, it goes in output frame. So remember the hierarchy, root, output frame, and now output field. And the text for this, as I said, if we don't want any text right now, later on we can change that. And the background is going to be, background is equal to the output color. And now I'm just going to say output field pack, and that will pack it into the output frame, and the output frame we packed into root. Here's where we packed output frame into root. Now finally, I've got to put a few things in the input zone where we will enter our data and then have a button where we can submit it. So I'm going to call the input field measurement, and that's a tkinter.entry field, and that's going to be placed in the input frame. That's the hierarchy we want. And its text will start off as 0. And later on, we're gonna retrieve what's entered into the measurement field with measurement.get. I'll just make a note of that here so that we remember when we write our function. And we'll have a button called submit. So that'll be a tkinter button. Oops, button. Which also goes in the input frame. And we'll give it a label of text equals convert. And then when we click on it, we want it to invoke a command, which we haven't written yet. So I'm going to say command equals convert. And we'll have to go back and write the convert before this is able to run. And we're getting a red dot over here because it's saying, what do you mean by convert? I don't know what you're talking about. That's okay, we'll fix it. Now in the input frame, we're going to use not the pack method for inserting widgets. We're going to use the grid method. And so we can say row and column. Row and column is understood by tkinter to be, you tell me how many rows, you tell me how many columns, and I'll place things in them. So if we start off with like just a row 0, and then we give 2 columns, it'll put 2 items next to each other. So I'm going to say measurement grid row equals 0, column equals 0, and I'll pad it a little bit on the X dimension, and I'll pad it a little bit on the Y dimension too. The submit button will also put in the grid format. We need to give it a row, just to keep it in the same row, but we're going to move it over into column 1. Pad X equals 5. Pad Y equals 10. All right, so 2 things we need to do. We need to finish up by defining our convert function. For now, let's just put in pass, but we also have to run the main loop of the root. So root.main loop. And I'm getting an error here. Missed a column. Missed a comma. There we go. So if I run this as it is now, we won't see a lot of interesting things. Well, there we go. That looks pretty good. But the convert function doesn't work yet because we didn't finish writing it. But you can see we've got the window, which is the root. We've got the upper box, which is the input field. We've got the lower box, which is the output field. And in the input field, we've got a data entry item, and we've got a button. And in the output field, you can't see it, but it's there. There's an output field that is a label that will show the results when we're done. So I'm going to quit this, and then let's work on convert. So for convert, as I mentioned, if the measurement is equal to nothing, then the output string that we're going to build will be equal to nothing. Otherwise, we want to have a centimeter measurement. Now that's going to return a string, so we're going to have to convert it to a float at some point. Then we'll have an output value that we'll create. And we're going to make a string on the fly that involves a formatted string. I need a float version of what's in the measurement field. And I want to divide that by 2.54 so that we get the number of inches for the equivalent centimeters. I want to, let's say I'm still inside the squirrely brackets, so I can format this with a colon and then a 0.2f. That will give me 2 decimal digits, and then I can close off the curly braces. And then I have a close quote and a close paren. So output string's now going to be centimeters. That's what we got from the field. And I'll say that many centimeters is output value inches. I think that's good. And we're almost done. Now I need to say output field.config. So this output field is the field on the window that we created down here. You can see it's highlighted. Output field.config, and then I'll just set the text of that field, of that label, equal to output string. Okay, don't see any red lights. Let's run it and see how it works. So if I put in 100 centimeters and I convert that to inches, it's 39.37. Looks good. 50 centimeters should be half of that. 19.69 inches, and 2.54 centimeters should be 1 inch. Looks good there. I'll post the code for this so you can play around with it if you'd like.